Hey everybody, welcome to an edition of Chicago Corner. Man, I look like crap.
I feel so sweaty.
So sweaty. Yeah, it's bad out there. Welcome to an edition of Chicago Corner in our really hot, stuffy studio. We don't do enough Chicago-centric stories, and a lot has been happening locally. Just a few weeks ago, I was able to get footage from the protests that happened in the wake of the George Floyd murder, which we have been trying to package together into a story for quite some time. And we'll be sharing some of those interviews today. Also, a lot has happened in terms of national politics and tying back to Chicago. Joe Biden recently sat down with Medicare for All activist Adi Barkan, who really made his case for why universal coverage in the face of a pandemic is the most humane response. Joe Biden, pushed back that he doesn't believe and respecting people's humanity or and lying to people that he will fight for their humanity. I'm sorry. That, he said it wasn't going to happen, is basically what he said. And we all have to accept that. Great. And we're going to discuss that later. And how this all ties into this summer in Chicago and policies that will be affecting us in terms of schools reopening and consistent violence throughout the city. These policies these realities come from failed policies, and my opinion, as someone who's 34 years old and grew up in the city of Chicago and the neighborhood of Little Village primarily, I would say that the policies of the failed war on drugs and failing to treat shootings as a public health crisis because our for-profit healthcare system prohibits any kind of larger public health programming that would address it is really what's culpable here. I want to start, Gunnar, you're behind manning the board again because we have a lot of videos to share.
Yeah, I'm just kind of compiling them, putting them together, doing what I got to do. Doing what we got to do, really working on the fly here. But I thought we'd start with an interview. I don't know how tightened up we made it, but I did with CTU Vice President Stacey Davis Gates shortly after she spoke at a rally. These were her comments of police being in schools and schools reopening in the face of COVID. Obviously, schools in general becoming a real ground zero for public policies and our everyday life. Make it bigger. Obviously, we're just freestyling it. All right.
For tuning into Heartlands Media, we're out here with Stacey Davis Gates, CTU Vice President, talking about getting cops out of CPS. You just gave a really impassioned speech. Thank you so much. You want to fill that in a little bit. How can we do this?
The school Chicago students deserve our safe schools, and when our students are telling us that they don't feel safe in our schools because cops are there, that they need librarians, that they need counselors, that they need people who can care for their social, emotional needs, that they need a full complement of course offerings. Those are things that we are supposed to provide, and that is what we see here today, is that this is a coalition of parents, of students, of people who love children and want to see them thrive, and they are making a demand. They are making a loud demand. They've been making the same demand for years, and it is time for our mayoral controlled school district to understand that demand needs to be met.
Just one last question. There's a lot of people that say that CPD just needs more training and they're providing service in their schools. What do you say to that?
They're not educators.
They're not educators. Thank you so much for taking the time with us. Stay.
But older people are black women.
We'll want to come back to this gentleman here, and there's a lot of other good interviews from CTU personnel that hopefully we revisit. But that was Stacey Davis Gates, kind of giving her take on what was going on since that interview. A lot of developments have happened. For one, there was a vote in City Council that didn't really pass. But more importantly, there was a vote at the Board of Education that actually addressed whether that budgeting line item of CPS paying for CPD services within the school system would continue. That was that vote. Obviously, nothing good has happened. That was failed to pass. I believe it was 3-2, or 4-3. Gunner's like, well, I don't know.
I don't know
the board. Yeah, no, the board of ed, 7 people. So yeah, it failed 4-3. 3 women voted. With parents and teachers that police really don't have the training, and they support to be in schools. They raised their votes and undergirded their votes with data and years of studies. Not just in Chicago, but many other, other urban areas and other educational settings. How well do police function within a school? They decided to vote against continuing that. four men voted in favor of continuing that. Without a whole lot of research or policy, just that, when they were kids, they were always scared of gangbangers shooting them. Yeah, so was I, and those gangbangers that might have shot me were scared of the cops maybe shooting them, which makes them super antsy. It's a whole toxic system.
It's a real cycle of violence.
Real cycle of violence. It's almost like a prison, school to prison pipeline. It's almost like we're a whole textbook case study for it here in Chicago. Unfortunately, CPS has doubled down on the policies that have not been working. And we have not seen a lot of relief from City Hall. The mayor herself recently was approached by a journalist of the left and asked about police and CPS, or defunding police, I think was the more explicit ask. And she's just like, that's not going to happen. So seeing a lot of reticence coming from there. I think that we had that other interview from a CTU teacher. We had Anna,
the first
I
one?
think Stuart was there. Yeah, and we'd like to share, other takes from other educators. We'll come back to the youth activists.
People can do, especially black.
not this the CTU one from the Google Drive.
Ooh, stall for me.
Sorry. Chicago's only independent media source. We don't get paid to do this. We do this because there's not a whole lot of media weaving these narratives together. And we get Chicago is such an overlooked specimen for its local politics. You could have Trump weighing in about our FOP president, and it can reverberate for months. Where in New York, they get their governor kind of going tit for tat back and forth, and with the president, and then going back and forth with the mayor, and then everyone's still kind of ousting the mayor. There's a lot more happening. Chicago likes its news coverage to be kind of sleepy. Less people looking at it, which is why we need to be doing this. So if you would bear with us.
We're just doing it. They're downloading them.
Okay. Do you have the other ones that I sent you about the protests on the southwest side?
Somewhere. Actually, wait. Can I play these from?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so
Ooh.
Okay.
Ooh.
quick wrap-up thought. I was just saying, so, Whitney Young has homeless students. So, we've got, so there's so much kind of hidden poverty. There's 17,000 homeless students in CPS. There's so much kind of hidden poverty that's below the surface. And, when we glamorize with all the, celebrity stuff, we try to just ignore it and make the problem go away. That's not the right answer. The right answer is a moral budget, and a moral budget means $33 million needs to be allocated towards something other than police. So that's how I feel as a teacher at a very privileged school. Even my students are feeling the trauma. I get feedback from my students every day, and their mood drops significantly when everything was happening downtown. My kids are hurting.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how kids in neighborhood schools are feeling.
Yeah.
I've been at many of those schools. It hurts, man. So I just hope that the mayor does the right thing, and I hope you all kind of contact your representatives. Just let them know to do the right thing. Okay.
Boom.
So thank you, Jose.
So wait, I have a question for you then.
Sure.
What how does like schooling work in the city of Chicago? Is there a major difference between like inner city stuff and neighborhood schools? Because I see a lot of those like very old brick and mortar buildings, right? Like all over everywhere.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily see them as much in like the inner city, right?
Sure.
So what's like the real difference?
Well, if you want to keep downloading some of the videos, I can kind of go and spiel a little bit about, we do want to get more education experts to share their knowledge on here with our audience. But essentially, Chicago Public Schools, CPS, is a district unto itself that's separate from a lot of things that Springfield has Illinois schools do as a whole, even in Cook County. Chicago's always been treated differently, separately, meaning that its students have always been treated differently and separately. There are your typical community schools, your neighborhood schools, what you call it. I worked at one, that is quite old, and Richard Edwards Elementary. It's so old, it goes back to a time when the neighborhood was a little overrun with an influx of Polish migration, and they actually had to have AM and PM classes for a generation or two. So schools have adapted to a lot of different situations, and you notice that a lot of them are built to be like bomb shelters in case of the Ruskies just deciding to drop an A-bomb over us. So they're also made as public institutions, right? Not something that you should just sell off, Ron Emanuel, to condo associate boards. But, you know, I mean, those were just in black neighborhoods, so what did he care? Public schools have, like Stuart there, I think we missed some of the beginning of the interview.
Yeah, it's in a separate video. I can go back to that, though.
He describes a little bit more what Whitney Young, that was the high school I went to. That's a magnet school, and it's one of the better high schools in the city because it's a magnet school, meaning that it takes in a certain percentage of kids from the neighborhood. It is in a neighborhood where there's not a whole lot of kids to begin with, so that kind of helps them really look around the home city for kids with really great test scores and then encourage them to commute into the high school. That's what I did at a little village, and a lot of kids did. You know, I was not a very smart kid, but you know, I was able to.
Don't put yourself down like that.
Well, I mean, I went to Whitney Young. You know, a lot of those kids are like, you know, probably advising Goldman Sachs on how to kill the planet at this point. You know, but you know, so they made something of themselves. But all the same way, you know, Chicago has had programming like magnet schools. It's had its trade schools that have been phased out. It's had hybrids of community magnet schools. We have our public-private partnerships. If it's been thought of in education, Chicago's tried it. We come up with our own ideas. We take in all new ideas, and that's why, you know, CTU is no small fighter in this fight. It's made up of educators who, a lot of them grew up in the city, who have this education that the city affords, and understand that, you know, what we have here is rare. A kid from Little Village like me was able to, you know, leapfrog a lot of educational opportunities to able to now relay this back to current CPS students who are wondering what to do and how to navigate the world and the age of Trump and COVID. And if that's not what education's supposed to be doing, you know, this kind of cycle to feed back into each other to make wiser, better decisions than I have made and, you know, my generation has made, then, you know, we don't know what is. But we know, any educator in Chicago knows that the education system in America is not designed to make you an educated, holistically functional adult. It's supposed to make you a pliable, malleable, civil member of society that would be happy to take any repetitive task job that McDonald's, Starbucks, Amazon wants to give you. And it's frustrating, it's infuriating, and why so many teachers instead focus on their passion projects of like, you know what, I'm going to do everything that CPS wants me to do, but you guys are going to know the hell out of geology, even though you're all third graders, and you're going to love it. And they do.
I'm going to teach you about dinosaurs so hard.
And it's awesome. I mean, like, yeah. It is. I mean, like, teaching kids about dinosaurs so hard is awesome because they love dinosaurs. No, adults, like, they're just like, oh, you know, does it make oil or something? Like,
see, it's interesting that you say, like, you know, that schools are meant to make you pliable, malleable people, because my dad growing up, what everyone in my family liked, the sort of motto was that your whole purpose in life is to grow up so that you can get a job, go to work, and pay your bills, and that's it. That's the cycle, right?
Right.
And
American values.
While I can understand the necessity for that, right, in the world that we live in, I could never really understand, because like that phrasing, it is what it is, right? It's generic. It's meant for everyone. Everyone's supposed to get a job, go to work, and pay their bills, whatever your bills are, right? But like that doesn't give you any space to like grow into what you want to do. That doesn't give you any room for creativity. That doesn't. I don't know. It's just such a weird generic phrase that I never could completely vibe with. You know what I
Right.
mean? And I don't know. It's I'm like kind of meandering here, but that's just like what I took from that, right? And also, I was raised in the South in a public school system that was maybe arguably better than a lot, but it still had its pitfalls, right? Like we focused very heavily on the revision of history and not necessarily the actual telling of history. And American values were very much valued in all of that education. It's just, I don't know. I think about all those things and I think about what I know now, and it makes me realize like I didn't really learn most of the skills that I use today in school at all, regardless, you know?
You know, and I think that a school, what it's supposed to do, and which is why we're having issues with this remote learning idea, and now Trump forcing schools to reopen without any real safety guideline protocols. Schools are not supposed to be like, here's a skill, and you come out like a video game and just like, da-da-dun, you know, like you leveled up. It creates an environment that you're supposed to be immersed in. To open up your mind to other things that you do want to do in life. And you get that through your peers opening up their minds along with you. And cohorts are very important in education and the way they, you know, and they work. And I say this because, you know, this sounds very pie in the sky, like, oh, you want to educate the kids and you're like so liberal arts. You know, any rich person, your boss, their kids, they're going to go to schools like that. Mm-hmm. Okay. So like, I mean, I work in public schools. I'm a teacher assistant. You know, it is hard, you know, in my neighborhood, you know, to have parents that, you know, it's not that they don't have values. They value the family unit and what's right for their own survival and for their well-being. And they have brilliant kids that can do so much. And you know how hard this city, this country, this world is. And, you know, and people have to make judgment calls about what's best. And as an educator, all you can keep doing is providing that environment to be as welcoming, as safe as possible. Now, that comes back to the question of police and schools. Are they making schools safer? You know, study after study suggests that there's a lot of problematic arguments with that. And really, at the end of the day, a lot of the security that comes out of SEIU that works in schools to begin with do a lot better than police officers, primarily because police officers are there as fear tactics against much more violent gang activity. So if you're already there as a fear deterrent, you're not building the holistic relationships that you need to create a welcoming learning environment. In which case, you're not really building a learning environment to begin with. You're housing these kids.
And if the police are the same, if the police in schools are the same police that are on the streets accosting these kids, right? Then like what child is going to want to go to school and which is supposed to be considered sort of a safe space, right? A sanctuary for education and for the development of young minds, right? But like, how are you supposed to actually have that safe space if the same police who are terrorizing the kids are the ones that are in the schools?
Likewise, I mean, not, you know, like I say this because teachers and CTU, present day, much like the nurses union, they are now basically the new vanguard of the labor movement and any kind of collectivist policymaking, just because they do the work that binds society together, that capitalism really is hungry to like tear apart. But it wasn't long ago when the teachers union was run by very, what did Ed Burke say? Products of their time. People that were products of their time. It's a nice way of saying they're very racist, but it's okay because they were born in the 70s or 60s.
Yeah, like
or
it's
something.
cool.
Yeah,
Just,
you know, we're old, so we get to be racist. No. But like that was not an uncommon thing in CTU or in Chicago public schools either. And there's a lot of cultural conditioning, especially in the West Side, South Side neighborhoods, that saw their schools close historically. That is also why you get members like Danny Davis and a lot of the aldermen and state officials under him to go along with school closures, because public schools also had a very racist history. That doesn't mean that charter schools are providing a better benefit. You can just make the argument that they can. And that's all really that was needed to happen for Ron Emanuel to just rail through 50 school closings in Chicago. Now those 50 schools being closed could really come in handy in trying to reopen schools and socially distant appropriate classrooms in the face of COVID. We don't have those public resources anymore. And this scheme to privatize, Chicago is at a nexus point with all of this. Obama's, legacy and his library here being probably the only popular Democrat in my lifetime, for a little while longer. This privatization scheme kind of comes down to the city because it's a city that has been experimented on by both private and public entities for its entire existence. So I really feel like Chicago Public Schools, the way that schools go here, the way that you're going to see it happen across Rust Belt states, across the nation. So, I mean, it's not a small thing that CTU's up against. And I never, we have had our political disagreements, me and CTU, but I always understand that they are playing at the highest stakes with a very exposed and vulnerable army of people that are only fighting out of necessity. So with that being said, do you have another of our clips to share?
I actually wanted to,
Okay.
and I'm like, obviously rushing along here to get this in here, but I actually kind of wanted to go to some of the comments for a moment.
Oh, sure.
Because we got a few, or at least one teacher who is in the chat, and just bear with me here for a quick second. I'm trying to make it
Mm-hmm.
a little all snazzy so that way you can just read it and not have to worry about it. Bam, 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 bam.
Okay.
YouTube comments. So, okay, I'm gonna go up here where they started talking about Mona Carmona is in the chat. Hey, what's up, Mona? CPS is Child Protective Services here in California, but
Right.
it's definitely different.
A little different. I do I had a friend go through the system in California. It's not a cakewalk.
So this was the thing I was gonna say is Mona lives in California and she has no curriculum. She can teach whatever she wants, which is kind of an interesting idea to me.
Yeah.
That you can just have free reign to do whatever.
Yikes. Okay.
And she's getting her lesson plans together and doing a unit on U.S. imperialism, bully
Nice.
or not.
Nice.
I think that's a good topic. Khalida is in the chat. I think I'm going to research racism and its origin and thinking about teaching a class about racism, the myth about race or something. I'm interested. That was actually the comment that I wanted to ask you about, because she says, as in why race was created in the first place. And so I'm really curious, what are your thoughts on that?
Why race?
As a generalization. If you,
I mean, you're gonna probably read. Crap! I look like awful garbage. You're probably gonna read a lot of racist thinkers from Europe. A lot of Dutch, Belgian people. I kind of went through a rabbit hole at one drunken stupor point, but the Dutch, they like to. When they were colonizing the Americas and Africa, and butchering children and raping women and treating human beings like cattle.
All in good fun for them, right?
Right. They try to make it scientific, to make it less weird. And that's where race comes from. That's where racism comes from.
Okay, and then we were talking about protecting your own.
Yeah.
Right? There was a period there, and so someone says, yeah, you want to protect your own. Oh, goodness. Talking about Betsy DeVos.
I mean, privatization schemes right there. Betsy DeVos comes from a billionaire family. What does she care about education? She wants to destroy public education. That's all it is.
Mona Corona, well, I'm a special education teacher. I teach emotionally disturbed kids, which I hate that label. Yeah, that's kind of a...
Emotionally disturbed. Yeah, we call them diverse learners in Chicago. We have really great PC language in Chicago for as racist of a city as we are. We've really perfected that, our diverse learners,
Ideals.
disturbed kids. Yikes. Yikes,
yeah.
California. Man, that's rough.
Yeah, that
God.
really is like not a good look, I don't
You
think.
know, and there's also problems with our mental health facilities and classifications. The fact that you can put someone in an institution because you think that they're a harm against themselves and no one else is pretty messed up.
I feel the same way. I have a lot of
Something that's been
thoughts.
used in CPS against, student bodies and parents. Not to go there, but, Ed Burke adopted a child, his son, he raised his child, but, the parent wanted their child back, and they were just like, no, you were not fit to be a parent. And the law having that power is a scary thing. So I get why people are skeptical of public schools. I mentioned in South Korea, I was open to having all kinds of discussions about all kinds of things with people, and real true Tea Partiers trying to get away from Obama being president, had a lot to share about public schools and socialism and the fact that we didn't need them, before the 1800s. Just weird stuff. But
Also, like, everyone is kind of a socialist, especially in America. Like, we really, our ideals are very fundamentally socialist, but people really hate the S word, right, or the C word.
yeah.
If you even mention that, that the Social Security, Medicare and Medicaid, all these programs that a lot of older people, a lot of older generations of people rely on, depend on, is a form of socialism.
And I think that we should be in the privatization scheme. Has always been privatization, oligarchy, and I'm sorry, but libertarians.
That's sort of the argument. Betsy DeVos's argument is that we need more private schools, right? Like charter schools. Is that the big?
That's it's going to end up falling on that. And I wish John DCK Punk were in the chat so you can talk about her connection to the fallen president of Turkey and his charter school scheme. It's a really weird story, but yeah, I mean the privatization scheme, and this is my thing with libertarians. It's just a plan to break up collectivist endeavors and programming and institutions to go back to monarchy and aristocracy. It's not a new idea. You just control the guns and the violence and the means of productions, and you can have your aristocracy and your monarchy back and just kill the planet without any wants and regard, and you can save yourselves and let the peasants die. The whole reason for our collective institutions was to prevent something like that. Karl Marx was a communist. He was not a socialist. And he viewed socialism as a stage in late-stage capitalism, which I believe we're entering, and we should enter with some grace and not such reticence, because that's how you end up with, guillotines in front of Jeff Bezos' house, and everyone's saying, oh, it was just an art installation. It's not a real guillotine. Because you are fighting against millions of people having some kind of dignified life in order to continue to consolidate power out of fear of losing control and not being able to face whatever disaster happens next. But we have videos from these.
Oh yeah,
This
I
is
got
Stuart.
you.
Okay.
Do you care? I'll probably just keep it on. But good question. I mean,
You want to introduce yourself? Sorry.
Hi there. So my name's Stuart Abram. I'm a math, computer science, and robotics teacher with the Young Magnet High School. We are a very privileged school. Our students are from all around the city. We're a commuter school, so we do have kind of a variety of experiences. But that's not, we're 40% free and reduced lunch. So, even though we are a very privileged school and we're more selected than Harvard because education is not equitable in the city, we have to kind of realize that this is not the...
I'm like kind of a dummy. What does that phrasing mean? Education is not equitable.
Equitable. So equity is kind of like the next step beyond equality. We used to be about everyone be equal, but not everyone can be equal because everyone's different. So it's more about everyone having equal access and opportunity, and that's equity.
Okay.
Some people might need more help, some people might need less help, some people might need different kind of help, but they should get that to have an even playing field.
Okay, that makes sense.
I'm very privileged and I'm very lucky, but it's not the situation that most teachers have. And most students have a very kind of a traumatizing experience. And we all know the ratios. If we research this, 650 to 1, student per counselor ratio. Not every school has a nurse. Some schools have a nurse, one day a week. Don't even talk about librarians, school psychologists, social workers. The ratios are terrible. We're spending money. Budgets are moral documents. Budgets are moral documents. And $33 million to police, that's just not where we need the money right now. So we need to kind of realize that seeing men with guns in schools will traumatize children and condition them for the the prison industrial complex, as well as, the military industrial complex. It's all connected.
Yeah.
But so, and connected to the military industrial complex, we've got the 1033 program, we've got military grade weapons going to police officers, and we have these police officers in schools with guns. They're not trained to interface with children. They're not trained, like school psychologists and counselors are, to kind of nurture children and give them kind of a good environment to grow. What they're there for is, police, of course, like so many folks have pointed out, are descended from slave catchers, and they're not meant to kind of have justice for everybody. They're meant to kind of instill kind of or solidify class dynamics, and I just think it's wrong to traumatize.
And can you switch over to the youth, because I see we're running out of time, and I really want to get the youth activists from Black Rising in there.
Ooh, I gotta look. It's in the same folder, yeah?
Yeah.
Should be.
I sent you all these a week ago.
I know, I was searching through. It's not your thumb one, because that one's too short.
That one's too short, then it's the one next to the thumb one. Yeah, must be that one.
Gonna do a whatever.
Sorry, guys.
Okay,
kind of sloppy here. We will revisit all these videos at some point.
Okay, so my curiosity, though, right, with the last interview,
Sure.
while I'm getting this ready, is talking about, obviously making the connection to, the original police stations where slave trading or slave catcher posts, right?
Yeah.
And those turned into our, kind of modern day police offices. And police in general, I feel like, are kind of meant to be more as cattle control in a ways.
Yeah.
It's sort of like keeping the herd down, suppressing the masses, right? Because that's what you see at these protests, right? You see police kind of making sure that people are corralled in the right places and they're not going out and doing too much extra, right? And then once you either the police instigate it, or you see, a few bad actors, I guess you could say, people who want to take advantage of an opportunity, right? And then that's whenever you see the police jump into action and start beating protesters or gassing people or that stuff. It's so my thoughts there, right, is police here are different than where I came from, in that police in Chicago are way more prone to violence than they are sort of in my neck of the woods. I also that could just be a form of privilege that maybe I've experienced. But what you coming from Little Village?
Yeah.
What kind of experience was that for you?
Well, we want to show what the youth activists were up to, because they kind of describe what their experiences were like. Mine were really mixed. Some police officers sold me drugs. Some of them hassled me. Some of them, were suspicious. Some of them seemed like they were, I don't know, grooming for information.
See, that's
Latinos
weird.
have a
That's
very
weird.
different experience in the African American community in Chicago, because we're being groomed to be the new police force to take on African American suppression. Was my experience growing up.
Okay. Interesting.
Rising, BLCK Rising. We are here today to honor the life of Oluwatoyin Salau, a 19-year-old black woman who went missing for 8 days in Tallahassee. She was seeking refuge after a protest. She was raped and killed by a black man. Tallahassee police didn't look for her. She did everything people say you're supposed to do. She gave the location of the person who had assaulted her. She gave all the information out, and we did an 8-hour silent protest today, at 1 hour for every day that she went missing, and nobody did anything. Nobody looked for her. The silence is symbolic of the silence that occurs when black women go missing. There's 64,000 black women missing in this country. People aren't looking for them. Yeah, and that's just what we know of, so there's probably more. And yeah, that's why we're here today.
It was a very powerful message you guys sent in the city. Do you want anything to add? The age range looks very young. You guys were really well organized.
Yeah.
It's my second protest you guys organized.
It's kind of funny. I find that a lot of these protests and a lot of the activism that occurs is always pioneered by you. So just something to keep in mind.
And we need people to know that it doesn't end here. We need people to actively, every day, protect black women, protect black people. We need non-black people to start paying reparations and give money to black people directly.
Because
To black women directly.
to black
because Black Lives Matter always seems like an after effect of somebody dying or somebody getting hurt or somebody getting shot. And I just feel like we need people to care while we're here, while we're living, while we're walking past the street. Walking past them on the street, while we are breathing and being their neighbors and their teachers
and even people
everything.
you don't know. It doesn't matter if you know this person or not.
Can I ask, how old are you guys maybe? I only ask because I'm 34 and I really didn't get politically active till I was like 26.
I just want to point out randomly, I know her. I went to school with her.
Really?
And I think it's just so wild that I just saw her in the background being interviewed by, that's
She was like one of the
station.
lead organizers.
Yeah, she we had a class together where she talked about her start in activism, which was
Freaking Chicago, small ass town.
I know it's a small
I love it
world.
here.
I think her beginning to activism was, I'm trying to remember correctly. I don't want to miscorrectly tell the story, but it was basically that her high school was not treating people fairly, or there was something that was there, and she led a silent movement.
Do you remember her high school?
No, I wish that I did. I really wish that it's been some time, right? I have inhaled some herbal essence
Yes.
since.
Mona
But
is
no, yeah,
celebrating that I'm 34. Yes, Mona, I'm 34 years old.
But yeah, no, I saw her in the background, it just makes me so happy to see her being a leader, right? But especially after hearing what she had to say about.
If we want to finish hearing what these kids had to say, and then the next interview.
Oh yeah.
And then we'll switch to the march on the southwest side. Have you had any footage from there? I was protesting streets, organizing. Now I'm trying to help these guys do an independent media channel. But 26, that was pretty old, considering how messed up this country is. You guys just seem much younger. What would you want to say to the millennial generation? How can we best help you guys?
Y'all need to pop out.
It's on us. Nobody's gonna fix this shit for us. Look what state they've left us to in. It's on us.
If you want to help us, then show up for us.
Show up.
Especially black men. Black men need to show up. We go up to these.
He got to have his own monologue afterwards, and it was pretty good.
He's-
So I'd like to share that.
He's in the beginning, right?
There he goes.
Yeah.
What older people can do, especially black men, is show up to these things. Right now, I see a lot of women on the front line, and I'm not seeing a lot of black men, and it's very disappointing. And honestly, it makes me upset, it makes me sad, and it angers me to my core that I don't see enough black men out here fighting for our freedom. And then we wonder why we have black women being left behind. We have activists being murdered, being assaulted. Is because black men are not showing up, and it's very disappointing. And the excuse that they're scared, because they've been trying to use scare tactics to get us from all coming out here, by saying the Proud Boys are out here shooting us. It doesn't matter, because we're all scared, and that's a risk that comes with the territory. That is a risk that comes for fighting for your freedom, because they don't want us to have our freedom, and they especially don't want to see black women get their freedom. They don't want to see what happens when black women are liberated. And I need black men to just step it up and come out here, and also not just show up, at the protest, but show up every day for black women, because they really need us right now. They're not as strong as the media tries to portray them. They're literally just humans, just like the rest of us. They cry, they feel too, and they need help just like all of us do. So I just really want them to step up. Really need them to step up.
Thank you for that.
That's powerful.
Yeah, good guy. What you call it? Did you have anything from the marches that were happening in the Southwest Side and Evergreen Park? That was from a while back ago, but I thought I should share them all in the same folder. Maybe.
I'm sure that they are.
Maybe.
I'm sure that they are in here. Man, you gotta really put me to work here today.
Sorry, yeah. I mean,
No,
I
that's my
said we were
fault,
going to
too.
use all these videos.
No, yeah, you're right. It's my fault.
My bad. I was like, we're going to use this and this. You're like, yeah, it's going to be cool. And I was like, okay. But I mean, we'll keep, and there'll be more videos to take. That was a group, Black Rising, that has kind of started new in Chicago. There's a lot of great groups in Chicago. Asada's Daughters has been doing great work. What you call it, Good Kids, Mad City. I organize with a group called Pilsen Alliance. There's other groups in Chicago. The Chicago Housing Initiative that works on housing policy. What you call it. All of these groups, the Kenwood Oakland Community Organization, COCO, that really taking the lead on the Obama Library stuff. One North Side working on housing policy. You have what you call Stop on the South Side. South Side together, working together for power. Oh God, so there's a lot of great groups.
There's the BLM Women of Faith, I believe, group. They were at one of the protests that Kit did.
Okay, BLM with Faith. I mean, again, when it comes to leaderless organizing, I've noticed Chicago really has, a lot of groups with leadership that have to kind of bind together to make an effective punch. And Black Rising is a group, I guess your friend, is part of the organizing efforts. But why I really wanted this footage, if you're still looking for it.
I'm desperately searching
You'll
for it.
see them walking, not hand in hand, but walking with police down Cicero Avenue in Chicago. And, like any ecosystem, like any social endeavor, there's a lot of activism can have a lot of ego and a lot of elbowing, ribbing about your tactic, this tactic. CTU, obviously has to work their tactics the way they work it. That's very different than your local Antifa group that can smash windows. That's very different than, Black Lives Matter protests that shuts down Michigan Avenue amidst Black Friday. That's very different than, constant summer cookouts in the neighborhoods of Austin in order to raise neighborhood awareness and presence to fend off gang activity. And that's very different than what Black Rising is doing. But I wanted to lend credibility and a big and uplift their efforts because that protest that I took that interview at, they did a silent sit-in at the intersection of Ida B. Wells Drive and Michigan Avenue, which is at the intersection of the 290 Highway and Lakeshore Drive. Without no small intersection and usually a very busy one, but they shut it down for well over 8 hours.
That's incredible.
That was incredible. That they sat in place. They refused to leave. The police blocked off traffic about a block in either direction away. So they were also really far away from pedestrians. So they didn't have a whole lot of media presence either. Another reason why I wanted to uplift their efforts, here today. They did get a couple hecklers. They get a couple people that went out of their way to try to drive or cycle or walk through them in order to just, say they had a problem with this. A few black men actually try to cycle through them, yelling about how they were at work. You had just your nasty, like catcalling naysayers of all kinds, but for the most part, they were very disciplined and just staying silent, staying in place. The lead organizers kind of being in the middle of the circle and fending off any hecklers from their allies. And it struck me as this would not be possible for these youth activists to be doing this without some kind of police buy-in, to be completely frank.
Meaning?
Excuse me?
Meaning?
Meaning that the police had to give them a permit or had to acquiesce that, you know what, we're not going to break you up over these 8 hours and arrest you if you stay here peacefully for 8 hours.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
all right, you guys are going to march and block traffic down Cicero Avenue, one of the busiest streets, you know, in America that goes right through all these police neighborhoods. Fine, fine, fine. Don't break any windows, please. Don't keep inviting people to come down, at 10 at night. If you guys are going to march, this is on a Saturday at 1 in the afternoon, 2 in the afternoon. They marched well into the evening, though. I mean, these kids they're putting their bodies on the line. And I don't think that they're saying anything here. I don't think I got footage but one of the things and I love the standoff. Man, you're right. It is annoying when I have the phone like that. I got to have it sideways. God. Loser,
Love you.
Jose. That's my bad. Okay, so
That's fine. But I mean,
we're
either way,
working on this, Chicago. We're working on it.
it illustrates the point. I mean,
the police are there, but now this was an interesting standoff. They stopped at this intersection. If you're the protesters, you're marching towards the camera. They want to take a right. Okay, they want to take that bend, and you see that there's kind of like a truck. There's like a water truck blocking the way for the protesters to go through.
this
Now,
right here.
yep, that dump truck there. So the funny thing is that the police knew the route that the protesters intended to take. That not a small showing at all. This is through a lot of police neighborhoods, which call Evergreen Park being the big one. Man, police neighborhoods are nice, by the way. A lot of money.
Looks green. This is just you talking, but
Yeah. Oh wow.
just saying some words.
Just saying
what
some
you're doing right
stuff.
now. But yeah, I'll keep looking through. I'm just kind of thumbing through it.
Yeah, but that standoff, that was a good one to show that the inflection point that this particular group is working on. I think it's a good one. It's a smart one. They want to take their message. They're trying to win hearts and minds.
This was that same.
That was that same. This is traffic trying to follow the protests and police. You see that there's a big gap between traffic and the protests. Police are doing that as a safety precaution. A lot of cars had driven through protests at this point. Chicago police are not amateurs.
They are really good at crowd control.
Crowd
right?
control, suppressing black uprising, and implementing white supremacy. CPD are pros. They're brilliant. The primary gambit while I've been growing up is winning over these Latino neighborhoods to over police black neighborhoods. You go to Benito Juarez High School, the primary high school in the neighborhood of Pilsen, where a lot of work went into to stave off overt gentrification efforts. You'll see nothing but military murals and the Army recruitment desk and ROTC programming. The Curie High School, named after Polish, scientists, because it was in a primarily Polish neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Now completely, almost overtly a Latino neighborhood. What do you have just a block away now? A super mall with kiosks, one after another. U.S. Army, U.S. Navy, U.S. Air Force, U.S. Marines, U.S. Coast Guard, and maybe there's like an FBI station somewhere there. But
there's definitely in areas of.
You don't need to be a straight A student, kid. You just have to be fit enough to go into one of those kiosks, and you'll make enough money to
and I'm
bring
sure
mama
that,
some money.
I'm sure that those recruiters, just like they did in my school in small town Arkansas, I'm sure that those recruiters are going to all of these lower income area schools and they're giving out the ASVAB tests so they can, get there. It's like their early recruitment. And I mean, they're giving these tests. I remember I took the ASVAB when I was like 16, which is, right before that prime age where people are deciding what they want to do with their lives because that's what the country has decided is what is the right thing to do, right?
Poverty is the draft, as people have said. Poverty is a draft. I mean, there's not a draft for Vietnam anymore. They know which neighborhoods they're going to impoverish next, and they target them for military recruitment. That's exactly what I saw in the ramp up after 9/11 in my neighborhood. Going back to Joe Biden, who does not believe in Medicare for all, who believes in a for-profit healthcare system that's going to leave tens of millions underinsured, and during a pandemic, where insurance companies will argue about which morbidities led to which death and whatnot. And our neighborhoods, the hardest hit neighborhoods of Chicago, have seen school closures, are hardest hit by COVID, and are now having a mayor that sees a problem with the organizing that's coming out of their neighborhoods. Joe Biden also does not believe in the legalization of cannabis, meaning that he's going to continue the war on drugs, meaning that he's going to continue the over-policing of black and brown bodies, and keeping very broken systemic processes that enable the kind of racism that has been normalized throughout our lives.
A process which we can't shy away from, he helped institute.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
he architected, which also gives him the power to also be like the least biggest jerk and be like, my bad, guys. Hey, I was wrong about everything. We're going to do it this way. But he can't, because he's not his own person. He's beholden to the corporations that he was an agent for and writing those crime bills. And by siding with that power, and Obama's legacy is sad. I mean, this is also my issue with what's happening amidst Bernie Sanders trying to give Joe Biden some cover. And they're trying to really divorce Bernie Sanders's working class populism as separate from the Black Lives Matter movements when they are not. And any we mentioned Richard Wright's autobiography, Black Boy. Richard Wright, a prolific communist Chicago writer, and like any African American communist, interweaving the systemic racism of the U.S., bound by its legacy to chattel slavery, with Marxist thought of liberation, is not a new thing. It's a super old thing. Chicago's actually famous for being really good at that. So actually, Chicago DSA not doing a better job at that, that's on all of us. But, some people were trying to make that happen.
We got a super chat. I'm
super chat.
trying to move it so that way it doesn't pop up. Ding ding, DCK Punk. I got a 98 on the ASVAB, completely drunk off my butt. That should frighten people. Yeah, I got the first time I took the ASVAB, I got like a 60 something because I didn't try at all. But the second time I took it, like to join the military, what did I get? It was like a 91 or something. Like, it's not a hard test is the point, right? It's not meant to, it's not the ACT, the SAT. It's literally just a basic skills test of like, do you know how to discern things? Are you kind of mechanically inclined? Can you read? That's it. That's really all that the test is there to help with, right?
And how much does the military take care of you after you're done? Because when I was growing up, there was a lot of gangbanging about and flexing on like being a no limit soldier and like doing anything for the cause and going, and then like that was not lost on me that also then eventually translated into military actual endeavors from people in my neighborhood.
I mean, I think a lot of people know already that that the military doesn't really, there's not a good system that is set up to actually take care of people post-military. The VA is a horrible kind of a amalgamation of a bunch of different ideas that have been slapped together and don't really help anyone. It's very slow, it's inefficient, it's still using the same dumb filing systems. Like, it's the same as sort of our medical system, right? It's not kept up with the technology that we have access to today. Mona, the ASVAB, it stands for the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery Test. It's like the ACT, but it's what the military uses basically as like a baseline to say, like, if you get like a 70 above, then you're able to do these jobs. If you get like below I think that the lowest score you can have, at least to join like the infantry and the army, was like a 32 or something like that, which is essentially the equivalent of, did you put your name on the paper? Did you at least answer some of it, right? Like it's not it's I don't know. It's just such a I don't know. I don't really know how to. They pitch it to every school in America, basically, but especially the more lower income schools, because the military knows that if you go to those lower income schools, you're going to have people who are living in poverty who the military looks like a really good out, especially if it costs, if you get a sign-on bonus for $6,000, whatever, your starting paycheck is going to be $1,500 a month with, the advancement that happens quickly after that. Like, it's 37. Thanks, TCK Punk.
And all of people's sense of patriotism is being tied up and giving their life to that. And it's
I'll
rough.
be real. I didn't join the military because when I was a kid, I wanted to join the military because I wanted to serve my country. But by the time I'd made it to 18 and signing that piece of paper, it was legitimately just so I could get the heck out of my town and get away from my family so that I could have some sort of discipline in my life, because I felt like I was very directionless. And so joining the military for me was, in my heart, at least, it was just for me. And that's mostly the experience of meeting people in the military, is a lot of them, they didn't really care about serving their country, right? Like, that's just that comes with joining the military, is you're serving your country. And I use that because there's so many other ways that you can serve your country. You don't have to join the military industrial complex in order to be a help.
That's what Uncle Sam has money for, though. And that's unfortunately, it's and I mean, I think there's legitimacy to like ideas for like a reserve corps, like a volunteer corps, like Pete Buttigieg was talking about, or like Obama had talked about before. Like, I would have joined something like that. I tried to join the Peace Corps. I couldn't because of health reasons.
I still kind of want to join the Peace Corps. I know someone who joined the Peace Corps and went off to not Puerto Rico. I don't remember where, but somewhere, right? But I mean, it's a really noble thing to want to serve other people, right? That's the human experience, is we want to serve other people, but there's so many better ways that you can do it and feel better about yourself, because if you join the military, they're just going to beat you down and turn you into another cog in the machine. Right. Unfortunately. Right.
I was saying before about those organizers, about having some police buy-in, needing some police help, like they had a permit, they had something. I also feel like there are I grew up in this city. My parents worked for CPS. My aunts worked for CPS. I have family. And I have, I have mostly my brother's friends, some that, became cops. Other cops that I remember, some are firefighters, I've known people that work in local government in some capacity. That's why I say it's a small town. It's not a big world. The upward mobility for a first-generation immigrant family to be established in America and make their bones with other Americans could really be found in that Chicago ecosystem. I don't think that's different from a lot of the middle-class African-American families and the fears that they have, politically. The neighborhood of Ashburn, it's not that far from me. I was organizing with CTU around before the last strike. But it wasn't lost on me at the time that this was also primarily a demographic that was not going to be very gung-ho about revolution and socialism, because they had survived generational terror to have the modicum of a middle-class life. However, that doesn't mean that fight is lost on them, or that the oppressions of the systemic racist system is lost on them. It's just that they know how god-awful it can be, how merciless it can be, and how bloody and terrorizing it could be. And that's a terror that doesn't go away quite easily. And Bernie Sanders never was able to assuage those terrors by never really playing right into the African American voting base of the South, or even here in Chicago. And I mean, his best ally here was Chuy Garcia, someone who his own failures with the African American community cost him the mayoralship if he actually was fighting for it. So this is a city where a lot of these dynamics happen in real time and very up close. And what I'm hoping for the youth, for Generation Z, that is currently in high school, that is currently in college, that is currently organizing in Chicago. And, I see me at 34 as someone that already had their shot at really changing the dynamics at the forefront. And now at best, I can help lend whatever my experience was to people that are still having these fights, to still have this energy to steer the boat. Because this is the privatization fights, all of these fights that have been happening towards Chicago, these mass evictions, to have major developers buy up entire neighborhoods to develop into little mini cities, to eventually the sprawl of Chicago become one mega city the size of Seoul. These are plans that billionaires from around the world have made years ago. And as far as they're concerned, it's on autopilot. The best thing that we can do is assert our existence into them and not let them trash through our lives and livelihoods and that's of our families and loved ones, without any care or remorse on their part. And that's what this fight against gentrification has been about. Getting police out of public schools in Chicago, I think, is a thing that's viably going to happen because the rich already have their hands on this city and they already want these public schools to be better administrating to their kids and their workers' kids. And so we should have it. I think that our neighborhood schools are not going to stop fighting for the kind of future that Chicago has worked itself to be around. But there's a lot of money and power coming towards that sense of place and normalcy, and those figures that used to protect it for very innocuous and sinister and nefarious reasons, in my opinion, figures like Ed Burke and Michael Madigan and Ray Lopez. That would be, not Ray Lopez, but I'm just giving him a shout out because he got a brick thrown through his window, and I don't know how real that is, but just on the off chance that it is, sucks. All the same, the opportunity to make a city of the future for all people in America happened after the 90s. And instead, we went to war with the world to subjugate it further, and Chicago just became much more racist, segregated, and overtly about destroying black political power, using Latino political power to do it, too, which I take very personally. I don't know if we have any last clips that we can really cap this off with. I know that we will be sharing a lot more about the protest interviews. I think there was one where I might have had some things to say to the police while they were camped out in front of the police station on the southwest side that maybe we can share.
Did you tell them to get frigged?
No.
Tell them to frig off. Someone in the comments suggested that we look for words to bypass censors, and I just think that that's quite interesting.
Frig?
Is it?
Sure. That's not a bad one.
Okay.
There we go. So, protests down Beverly was stopped from entering Mount Greenwood. The protesters have taken a different route and are now sitting in front of the police department here. Again, there's no media presence here. Pre-recorded video here for Hard Lens Media.
This is just like the interesting imagery to me. It's like the further out from the protest you go, you see more of these officers, right? But like closer to the protest, it seems like they have personal touch.
And
cops.
it's also, it's goes both ways. I mean, like these organizers brought in allies from all over who are now dealing with officer friendly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not dealing with riot cops. Again, though, the police had the heads up from these protesters, so they're like, okay, maybe we'll work with you a little better. And also, I mean, not lost on me, and especially you kind of feel it in that environment, like the riot cops are just as worried about the racist neighborhood they're in. Some psycho coming out with a pistol, some white man coming out with a pistol, and then I'll have to pretend to be cool with it, and then they're like, great, I got to deal with this guy, like, because they don't know every psychopath, every entitled person in the neighborhood. So
Right.
somebody might actually try to drive through. So like the cops were nervous. You could feel that. But at the same time, it's like it's the sympathy here, and my reason for showing this video is that they didn't have media presence, So the cops are working their own gambit for the protesters, and these young protesters, without media presence or having their own independent media there, are falling kind of prey to this police gambit, which is what other protesters might look at these efforts and deride and talk smack about. My thing is, and hopefully doing more of these with Chicago Corner and with Harlan's Media, is that we should have somewhere to really rationalize all of these stories into the concentrated asks and efforts that we want. Police out of Chicago Public Schools is a good one. It's a simple one, though. And as I said, we might actually get it because the very rich and powerful of the city can see why it plays to their benefit in the long term. Defunding police now immediately, not 2-5 years from now, but now, while these national protests are happening, is a better and stronger asks that real socialists are asking for. How more viable that is, I don't know. But I know that asks makes getting police out of public schools a lot more likely to happen. And if all we can do here is track those stories and efforts, then that's what we should be doing for everybody. So.
We have to wrap up, unfortunately, but where is it in here? Those lovely folks at the other end of the protest, right on Michigan Avenue. I've lost it now. Oh, it's in here somewhere. All of these people, right?
Yeah.
The main point that they drove across in the end, right? That what millennials need to do is show up, because a lot of, especially, sorry, Jose, but, older millennials, right? Like your generation of millennials.
Yeah.
Very much did allow all of this injustice to just sort of continue, right? Because there was no real direct end that made sense.
Yeah.
And I understand that. And I'm 24, you're 34. So I mean, we were a decade apart, right? But we're still our millennials, right? In that aspect. But it's like even the divide between like 34-year-olds now who are entering politics for the first time, who are actually starting to join these protests, who are actually entering positions where they can affect change, right? It's not enough to sort of assimilate into the environment that's already existed and say like, okay, this is what we're doing to help, right? Because you see like Gen Zers taking to the streets and showing up in large numbers and showing up for each other and for us, right? And for the older generations, even beyond us. That's the whole takeaway that I have, right? Is that it's all about, not me, us, right? Like the whole origins of, I think, where this movement really got its steam is in that idea.
And I think that it's, please take lessons from Occupy Wall Street. My generation, our take to the street moment was Occupy Wall Street. And a lot of us were absent, me included. I was overseas and kind of like, oh, wow, I wonder if that's a good idea or not.
When was that, like 2009?
That was 2009, 2010.
Yeah, I was a child.
Yeah, see, I was your age,
That's
and just
wild.
checking out what the scene was all about. And it was just like, okay, this is what people are doing. It seems kind of disorganized. And we just got Obama in, and for me, like, I always knew Obama was not going to be a peacemonger, He flat out said he wanted to kill Osama bin Laden. He used those words. We need to kill him. Like, you don't run for president using that language if you're like about peace and love. I understood. I mean, like, I'm from Chicago. Like, I understood that he needed to be the tough guy military man to one up McCain and to have the legitimacy to try and go against what George Bush was about, which then he didn't, which is my only thing with Obama. All I ever really wanted from Obama, the hope, the change, was to be some kind of repudiation on the George Bush years, and he is everything but. He's almost more like, well, George Bush wasn't that racist about Katrina. That's really Obama's legacy. So, you know, great. Glad that we voted him in. It was an inspiring election. Maybe it's better that Bernie didn't win. Otherwise, you guys would be re-Obama'd, you know?
That's a really good point.
Yeah. Stay woke, stay engaged, and follow leadership that does not look like you, whose stories, if you're looking to liberate the world of injustices, you have to let the people who are facing the most injustices, who are organizing against it, lead the way. You probably have a lot more to offer than they have, you know, in their inventory, and yet they have the answers to their own liberation. That's the truth of all our lives. So anyway, my hair's a mess.
And with that, yeah, I feel sweaty, which is
Sweaty.
weird because I just
So
want to
this
sit
has
under the
been
thing.
An interesting take on Chicago Corner. We were talking about Chicago protests, CPS, what's going to happen in the fall, whether we're going to get reopened or not, according to dictator Trump there. Joe Biden's kind of like, hey, man, and he doesn't really say anything else. I think he's just letting the American Federation for Teachers, who always are kind of letting the home privatization, charter school stuff kind of happen. As long as they get to unionize them, which is not a bad gambit, but
it's all that matters, right?
I mean, if they get to unionize the labor politics, it's just a whole thing. But Chicago Corner, Jose and Gunner, hope you enjoyed. We might do this again next Thursday, right?
Programming note, just so you guys know, we're on HLM in about 45 minutes. Lainey will be on for Civically Minded, and then we will be moving back into Chicago Corner at 6 for the Chicago Corner segment. So that's pretty much it. Yeah. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bag up, bag up.